Hello, and welcome to Open Hwo Lessons. This is the fourth bonus episode, so which is basically the last. I don't know if I'll be making bonus Open Hwo Lessons after this one, because most of the Hwoarang lessons that I covered, the 46 Hwoarang lessons that I already covered previous to making the four bonus episodes to make it at around number of 50 Hwoarang lessons, were more or less enough to be a basic foundation for your Hwoarang and then build it up to however you'd like to have your own cheese. So these are like bonus ones, so like you may or may not need these, but this is very interesting because this involves rage, and I'm pretty sure you've had this scenario before as Hwoarang, wherein you were pressuring, they were already in rage, you had them at the wall, you wanted to continue pressure, give them another mix-up so that you're at a major advantage and you can close out the set earlier. And then a rage art happens in between the Flamingo string, and then it's just like GG shakes my hand, right? And then boom, and then if they're really low in HP, that's going to be way more damage than what practice mode is always giving us. So I'll be showing you a couple of examples of how to stop rage arts on hit for a couple of the typical scenarios like down 3-4, RFS DF+4, 1-2. That's about it. Those three scenarios. So that's again down E4, RFS DF+4, and 1-2-3 or 1-2-4 on hit and on block for all three. These are very, very common. The rest, so basically once you have this, you have an idea of how to lab out the situation. And of course, each rage art in this game is completely different. So even if most of the characters in the game have a mid rage art, you have to be wary of how their rage art activates. Do they move slightly back? Do they jump? Do they fly? So the characters I'm mentioning there is something like Gigas, Gigas, Claudio, Devil Jin. Not in the particular order I mentioned, the being evasive stuff. So it's not, I'm taking too much of your time. Let's go straight to down 3-4. So we're gonna have to record Hwoarang. One of the classic things for Hwoarangs to do is down 3-4, RFS DF+4. So on hit, I'm pleased to say that even a 13 frame rage art, the fastest rage art in the game, will never activate because they have no frames to do anything. So the only move that you shouldn't really press on down 3-4 on hit is something like a snake edge. So if your opponent has rage and you decided to do the snake edge, down 3-4 into snake edge is never a good idea because their rage will activate. But of course in this case it's a high. If that was a mid rage art, you're going to lose a ton. So you don't really have that much to worry about for down 3-4 on hit. You'll be completely fine from most of Hwoarang's moves, albeit for the snake edge. And of course, if you're doing the snake edge versus any character with a high I-13 rage art, it's still okay, but it's very, very risky. Yeah, just take care. But we'll talk about the situations on block for down 3-4. So again, the most common scenario is RFS DF+4. So of course we're going to start in LFF so that the computer doesn't have it messed up. So if an opponent times it correctly after they block down 3-4 and they rage art, whether they block the second pick or not, that's going to be a punish. There is no way out of it. And even if they wait, right? So if I wait for it and then rage art, that's clean. That's a really good Hwoarang punish. And of course it doesn't register as a punish, but it registers as a counter hit because again Hwoarang is doing an attack. Because again, you're in Flamingo, you gotta commit somewhat, right? So one way out of it is to do the high. So again, if they block both hits, you're safe. And this is already against an I-13 high rage art. This is not this is not including the rage arts that have some evasiveness, depending on how they start up. But of course, if they wait for as long as they've ducked the high of down 3-4, there's honestly nothing you can do, maybe except a RFS F4, and it will chip their HP, and hopefully that'll be enough to win the round. So again, if they block both hits, again, as this is an I-8 high, they can never activate it. And of course, if they duck, I'm doing it too good, huh? Let me delay it a little bit. They're like that. Some hits of RFS F4 would go in, so against an I-13 that's not going to happen, but against a normal rage art, whichever it starts at 20 or 23 frames, you're going to see some of the hits connect first. Most especially if there is a slow-mo effect, you're going to get a lot of damage. And that's the most you could do really in that scenario. So that covers down 3-4, both on hit and on block. That's really the most you could do. Of course, you could mirror this scenario for LFS 3-4, as they are more or less the same thing, mid-high on hit and on block. So let's go to RFS DF+4, one of my favorites. This is the axe kick. This axe kick right here is a +8 force crouch. Surprisingly, even on hit, you could still lose. So again, +8 force crouch. We'll go for RFS DF+4, right? RFS DF+4, DF1+2, and then we hold back. And then we're gonna have Jin here hold forward. So again, he's gonna be in force crouch, and there's nothing he can do. This is more or less guaranteed. So you'll be safe if they're matching Rage Art in this scenario wherein they don't want you to. You don't want them to do it. They don't want to handle your pressure anymore, right? So that's one of the best things you can do in an on-hit scenario. But on block, this is kind of tricky, because it depends on what Rage Art you're fighting against. So here, we're playing against an I-13 high Rage Art. So again, if I block RFS DF+4 and I Rage Art, this is a high, so Hwoarang will avoid it. But this will not happen against a mid-Rage Art, and allow me to demonstrate that for you by swapping over to a character with a mid-Rage Art. Let's have Heihachi over here, just for good measure. I'm going to block RFS DF+4, and I'm going to mash Rage Art, and that's it. So even if this is safe against an I-13 high Rage Art, this is not safe against a 20 frame mid Rage Art. So the question is, if that works for one Rage Art, what do you do for the other Rage Art? Well, there isn't really much you can do, because the next best thing you could think of is to do the jab. A jab is really, really fast on block. You jab and then you hold back. So you check if Hwoarang would be safe there. After you block that, I press the Rage Art. Heihachi does it. The jab goes through, but it does register as a punish, so Hwoarang's not safe anymore at that point. You could also attempt to do an evasive move in this scenario, which I believe is not exactly in your favor. Although it could avoid it. Like whether you do back 1 or back 2. What I did here is back 2 in this case, and it tracks like crazy. So we'll see if Hwoarang's back 1 would do any good in this scenario. Or else there is basically almost nothing you can do here aside from entering RFF manually. Like back 3+4 to block. Or just backdash. Because you can't enter even Flamingo. If you enter Flamingo, you can only do LFS back 1. And even then, your opponent's Rage Art might track like crazy. And so that's a risk you wouldn't be willing to take at all. And there you go. So that's already extremely risky in itself. You cannot do that, of course, against a I-13 high Rage Art, because it's going to track those there. What you could do is the down jab. So that scenario isn't as great, but it's more or less the best you can get. So let me go back to Jin. So for 1-2-3 on block, one of the best things you can do, or on hit rather, basically anything on hit, right? If you're always getting it on hit, I highly recommend you do a mid check and you could be on your way. So if you do recognize that you did get the hit, so again I hold forward and then I'll RFS DF+4, there are no frames. So that's like easily. Again, the only thing that would typically lose in this scenario would be the snake edge. But let's just double check with the down 3-4 if that would lose, which I believe it will not, even against an I-13 Rage Art. Yeah, it will not. So you'll be fine. You're in the clear if you do that. So let's go on block. So we're going to go back to LFS 1 here. Then hold back. This is probably your best option already versus Rage Arts. And that didn't register as a punish. So we'll have Hwoarang block a little bit earlier. Hold back for good measure a little bit longer. Because again, the Rage Art does eat up significant time in the recording of the CPU. So you need to fully confirm whether Hwoarang was able to block there or not. So he cannot. So you're going to be at big risk again if they catch you on point, or you're completely safe. So there's a specific timing to this if you're again, anti-Hwoarang. And if you're a Hwoarang, you have to watch out when you do LFS 1. Like if your opponent gets the timing on the dot like I did earlier 2 tries ago, you're going to be on the floor with potentially Rage or none at all. But so far this seems to be fine, so that means that one time I actually got it on point was probably the just frame version of punishing LFS1 with Jin's I-13 Rage Art. That's not easy to do. Not easy to do. Of course, this option would be universal with the mids rage arts as well, but you'd have to double check and lab all of these again because all the rage arts act a little bit differently from each other, and their startups are a little slightly different from each other as well. You have to watch again the animation, how it starts up with the whole slow-mo and whatnot. So we'll do 1, 2, 4. So if in 1, 2, 4 is very similar to the down T4, the LFS D4 case, so you're going to be doing RFS F4 or RFS 2, right? So again, just to show you, just 1, 2, 4, RFS F4, and again, how it's on hit, I'm gonna press Rage Art, that's not gonna go in, and then if I change that to RFS 2, 1, 2, 2, hold back, hold forward, and then Rage Art, that's not gonna connect at all. Like, it just won't, So of course, if you change these scenarios on block, however, RFS F4 should be fine. No, should. The word is should. Because it is an I8 high. So you should be completely fine again every time you enter right Flamingo on block. The opponent cannot rage art through this. So it includes mid rage arts, except the mid-low rage arts. And the only low rage art in the game is Lucky Chloe. So if I press rage art here, I get hit. But if I'm holding back while pressing my rage art, Jin is completely safe. So it's slightly two different things when you press the rage art and the non-rage art button. Of course, you check this with RFS 2. Then you hold back. You want to see if it's a similar scenario. So again, on block, I'm pressing rage art early, and of course that didn't register. So this is the same scenario as 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 4, RFS 2, hold back for quite a while. That should be safe right about here, 24 seconds. We block, and I forgot to press rage art there. Rage art, the 2 goes in, that should end up as a block. Okay, so this is the just frame one. Where's the timing we're in? There you go, like that. So it's more or less the same, it's more or less mirrored. So again, if your opponent has the correct timing on the LFS1 or the RFS2 on block, you're going to be on the floor. And if not, you're going to be more or less safer as long as you're holding back during the whole sequence. But of course, RFS F4 is far more reliable in that scenario if you're doing 1, 2, 4 on block while the opponent has rage. So again, this was very, very short, very, very quick as well. This has to be fully labbed, by the way, because again, most of rage arts operate completely different. And there's probably other scenarios you want to lab out as well. Maybe something like up forward 2 on block and on hit, RFF back 2 on block or on hit, FF3 on block or on hit, DF4 on block or on hit. This is mainly just to start up your lab, Bing or Hwoarang. Or again, if you're watching this for anti-Hwoarang, to figure out the scenarios, even like RFF DF4, do back 4, does that lose against the rage art or whatever? Do I win here with my rage art? Blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. It's very, very important as Hwoarang and as anti-Hwoarang to build up your knowledge with this kind of stuff. That way, when you know the Hwoarang's leg is up, when he's in that Flamingo, right, you can just press your rage art and it's all good. And most of the time, that's usually the case. That's why a lot of Hwoarangs, their main advice is that if your opponent has rage, don't keep stringing as much, hold your buttons, wait, remain in LFF or an RFF so that you're completely safe. That way, you don't get hit by a random rage art during your pressure, as they like to call it. And even as I like to call it. It's cheese, basically, man. And that has been the cheese for today. Again, I've been Frontier. And yeah, thank you for watching. Most of my thoughts on players with 15 to 20k wins. Dedication. Dedication. They are dedicated. And they're having fun as well. They enjoy playing one character. Justice, one of the best Paul players in the world, had like an absurd amount of wins with Paul. And we don't bat an eye. Like, at all. We only bat an eye when it's against other players. But no, I don't think that should be the case.